This is an excerpt from my essay, All My Niggas Was White, Notes from the Color Line. Before divorcing after 25 years of marriage, my parents' household would tally 2 children, 13 cats, and 3 dogs. My dad claimed 1 dog, and my mom the remaining 15 animals. When I tell you that I was raised by cats, I do not mean figuratively. I mean that it's hard to make sense of a childhood with that much fur and litter, always altering the atmosphere of every memory, especially with how often we were forced to move, fur and litter providing the other few constants besides the family itself. I mean that I can't tell you the plethora of pets was what eventually split up my parents, but that I have my suspicions. As with all tensions, we can trace only the manifestations, not the cause. In 1990, when my parents married, Cheryl Gay Steinberg of the New York Times reports that 63% of non-black adults said that they would be very or somewhat opposed to a close relative marrying a black person. 25 years later, that number drops to 14%. My parents, always bucking the trend. Steinberg attributes these trends to a more famous black wife and white husband, the Lovings. No author but that of reality could have given them a more fitting name. If you track it from their landmark court win, Mildred and Richard Loving were only legally married for 8 years when Richard died in a car crash in 1975. Or 17 years if you track it from when they were arrested for marrying illegally in their home state of Virginia. The matriarch to thousands of mixed couples now sprinkled in every city, never remarried. All she wanted was to return to their marital home in Virginia after being exiled to Washington, and so she wrote then Attorney General Robert Kennedy, and so he set her up at the ACLU, and so they sued and lost, and so they appealed and won at that highest of courts, and so they returned to Virginia, where they would both die 33 years apart, leaving behind 3 children, a farm, 2 dogs, and the ever-increasing normalcy for interracial couples to wed and part and love however they so please in this country where all men are created equal. Colloquially, America is a melting pot, but maybe a better metaphor is a house of 13 cats. I'm talking about the purring, the smashing of vases knocked clean from the countertops, the frantic digging of litter, the frenzied scratching of carpet and furniture, the bickering of people who'd rather blame the animals in the zoo than their keepers. You know what I'm saying. I'm saying all my niggas was actually cats. I learned from them how to remain aloof when the house came crashing down. Friends were rarely permitted over if the house smelled too much like cats, but you can guess it always smelled like cats. And so those that could come over, friends deemed close enough to be family, had to understand that they were now one of the cats, whether they liked it or not. They were outnumbered on our turf. America ain't no melting pot. It's a house riddled with cats. DNA evidence suggests that cats domesticated themselves, kept their feral instincts all these generations removed, but still chose a life where food and shelter were readily available. The resegregation of America was just as inevitable. The laws changed, but white folks never stopped believing their shelter was a little alcove away from everyone else, and so they crept out slow but steady and drew a line behind them as they fled. You know what I'm saying. Race ain't what broke up my parents. Life did that shit. I'm saying the cats needed a new home. I'm saying sometimes it'd be nice when we let nature run its course, like one couple's desire for home dissolving a domestic color line, and other times the house is left empty, except for those staring forever out its windows. Barack Obama was chastised by conservative media outlets for remarking that if he had a son, he would have looked like Trayvon Martin. Let me say then that I have a mom whose smile reminds me of Sandra Bland's. It's hard not to draw ourselves into these public reckonings with black mortality, hard not to take it personally, hard not to worry for our loved ones and for ourselves when we know the eye of the oppressor is ever vigilant, because we were learned in the schools they gave us, or else, like me, infiltrated the schools they hid in plain sight. Either way, we learned the lie of safety. It's our moms that had to tell us not to stay out too late, to always do as they tell you, to put your hands up in the hope that they don't fire anyway. I mean to say that I grew up on both sides of the color line, but because the color line resides within me, I will always see Sandra Bland's smile as my mom's, and that it's not supposed to be the son that worries for the parent, but there's a fatal, contagious disease spreading as I write this, and it disproportionately infects our side of the color line, because while my mom was an A student, she wound up an essential worker, like many a body with her complexion, because that's the way the system draws the path. I mean to say that if COVID don't get her, it could be the bastard that pulls her over for failing to signal. A disease either way, of the body or of the body's country. Where is the end of the line? The line continues. We've deputized the lynchers, bought their guns with school money. The house been on fire, and now some white friends are acknowledging that yes, the drapes are smoking maybe, and I'm thinking how it all seems so many years too late, and wondering if it would be better to just let it all come burning down. But those white friends ain't ever been my niggas. Ain't none of their mamas ever looked like Sandra Bland. Still, I carry this charge that we might be comrades, be kin, be blood, and maybe that's from that white schooling, but those that defund black schools would defund white schools too if they thought them too radical. Such is the preservation of power, the continuation of the line. Power sniffs out the oppressed and presses harder against their backs for fear of retaliation. And if we're gonna push back, then something more than white comfort gotta give. 'Cause here we are at another phase of the color line, another rupture in a vein lined with gashes, and goddamn it's hard to walk straight or stand tall with so much blood lost. And maybe we ought to give in to the stumble and fall and blot the line with ash and dirt, blot it on real thick, black as black can be.